Every transformation begins in a single place, long before it shows up in your life, your mind. The thoughts you repeat, the beliefs you hold, and the meanings you attach to your experiences quietly shape the direction of your entire future. Most people never question this inner system. They live inside the same perspective for years without realizing they can change it. But the moment you start shifting how you interpret the world, everything around you begins to respond. This audiobook invites you into that powerful turning point. Not through pressure, not through hype, but through awakening a new level of clarity. One that allows you to see possibilities you used to overlook and strength you didn't realize you carried. This is the kind of shift that rewrites how you handle challenges, how you use your energy, and how you show up in your own life. If you've ever felt like you're capable of more but couldn't access the switch, this is where it begins. Welcome to the journey where your thoughts become allies. Your perspective becomes your advantage, and your mind becomes the foundation of everything you're about to build. Welcome to Shift Your Mind. The shift that changes your entire life rarely starts with something loud. It begins quietly inside the patterns of your mind, in the automatic ways you respond to yourself without even noticing. Most people spend years living through thoughts they never consciously chose, allowing old interpretations to guide every decision. What feels normal becomes a mental autopilot that shapes what they see and what they believe is possible. When you start examining this inner machinery, you realize the switch that changes everything has been within reach the whole time. Awareness becomes the first doorway to reclaiming that control. Your mind isn't just a place where thoughts float around. It is the command center directing how you experience the world. Every reaction, ambition, hesitation, and burst of courage starts in this invisible territory. If that territory remains unexamined, it quietly reinforces the same familiar limits again and again. But the moment you begin watching your thoughts as they arise, you notice which ones empower you and which ones sabotage you. This observation is not judgment. It's a form of inner leadership. And leadership begins by recognizing the rules you've allowed to run unchecked. Many people believe thinking is something that simply happens to them, like weather moving overhead. Yet thinking is a skill, and like any skill, it can be trained, refined, and redesigned. When you understand that your mind is not fixed, you stop treating every internal message as truth. Instead, you treat it as information, something you can evaluate rather than obey. Disempowering thoughts lose their authority as soon as you see them clearly. This perspective turns the mind into a tool rather than a barrier, and tools can always be reshaped. To unlock the switch that changes your thinking, you begin by questioning the interpretations you've been carrying for years. Many of these interpretations were formed in childhood, shaped by environments, experiences, and the behavior of others. You may not remember choosing them, but they still influence the meaning you assign to events today. When something triggers you, you can trace the reaction back to an old belief that no longer serves your present self. It shows you where your power has been hiding. Your thoughts influence your emotional landscape, and your emotional landscape influences your behavior. This chain reaction happens so quickly that you can mistake the output for inevitability. But when you slow this process down, you see the hinges where change is possible. A single shift in interpretation can redirect the entire chain, creating new choices in places where old habits usually take over. This is why people who learn to observe their minds often feel like their life suddenly opens up. They have finally found the hinge they were missing. The switch you're searching for is not dramatic, it's subtle. It involves recognizing that your thoughts are not instructions, only possibilities. You can choose which thoughts to energize and which ones to let pass without acting on them. Most inner struggle comes from assuming you must accept every thought as meaningful, when in reality, many of them are simply echoes from old perspectives. By detaching from these echoes, you open space for new interpretations to form. In that space, clarity becomes easier to access. Your mind learns from repetition, which is why certain patterns feel so automatic. If you've spent years rehearsing doubt, the mind becomes skilled at generating more doubt. If you've spent years rehearsing fear, the mind becomes efficient at finding reasons to stay small. But the same mechanism works in your favor once you start introducing new patterns. Consistency gradually reprograms the mental environment until the thoughts that once drained you lose their influence. This is not magic. It is neurology aligned with intention. A powerful shift occurs when you realize that thinking differently is not about forcing positivity. It's about choosing interpretations that align with truth rather than old wounds. You can acknowledge pain without building your identity around it. You can recognize fear without allowing it to dictate your direction. This balance allows you to stand firmly in reality while still guiding your mind toward growth. Over time, this new approach becomes your default way of meeting the world. Unlocking the switch also means questioning the stories you tell yourself. Stories shape your perception more than isolated thoughts ever could. If your story positions you as someone capable of growth, challenges become part of the path rather than signs of failure. Changing your thinking often begins with rewriting the narrative you use to describe yourself. You don't have to lie. You just have to choose a version of truth that empowers you. A crucial skill in transforming your thinking is learning to separate facts from interpretations. Facts are neutral. Interpretations give them emotional weight. Two people can experience the same event and walk away with entirely different conclusions because their minds assigned different meanings. When you become aware of this, you stop assuming your initial interpretation is the only valid one. You start exploring alternatives that give you more strength, more clarity, and more direction. This flexibility is the essence of mental freedom. Your inner dialogue plays a major role in your thinking patterns. The voice in your mind can act like a mentor or a critic, depending on what you've trained it to be. Many people allow this voice to speak in ways they would never tolerate from another person. But once you begin noticing its tone, you can shift it towards something more supportive. This doesn't mean pampering yourself. It means communicating with the same respect you extend to others. Your mind responds more effectively to guidance than punishment. One of the deepest shifts comes from understanding that your thoughts are influenced by where you place your attention. Attention is the gateway through which your mind decides what matters. When attention is scattered, your mind becomes reactive and unfocused. But when attention is directed intentionally, your thinking sharpens and becomes more strategic. This level of focus allows you to notice subtleties you previously overlooked. With practice, this becomes a mental habit that strengthens your decision-making. Unlocking the switch requires accepting that discomfort is part of growth. New ways of thinking feel unfamiliar at first, not because they are wrong, but because they disrupt old patterns. The mind prefers what is familiar, even when it limits you. When you push past this initial resistance, you discover that discomfort is temporary while transformation is lasting. With each step, the unfamiliar becomes a new normal, expanding the landscape of what you believe you can handle. The mind is constantly predicting outcomes based on past experiences. These predictions shape your expectations, and your expectations influence your behavior. When you start expecting growth instead of failure, Your actions begin to align with opportunity rather than avoidance. This shift is subtle but powerful because it changes how you approach challenges. You move from protecting yourself to positioning yourself. That is the difference between surviving your life and shaping it. A major turning point occurs when you take responsibility for your internal environment. Responsibility does not mean blame or guilt. It means recognizing you have influence. You cannot control everything that happens, but you can control how you interpret what happens. This awareness restores your sense of agency and removes the illusion that you are powerless. With agency comes momentum, and with momentum comes change. This is how small internal shifts expand into large external transformations. The switch that changes your thinking grows stronger when you practice self-observation without self-judgment. Judgment contracts the mind, while observation opens it. When you observe your thoughts with curiosity rather than criticism, you gain insight into patterns you never noticed. That insight allows you to understand why certain reactions arise and how to redirect them. Over time, this creates emotional resilience that becomes your foundation. From that foundation, you can build new habits with confidence. Your environment influences your thinking more than you might expect. The conversations you engage in, the content you absorb, and the people you surround yourself with all act as inputs for your mind. If those inputs reinforce your limits, your thinking becomes constrained. Choosing environments that support your growth becomes an essential part of unlocking your mental switch. You upgrade your surroundings as intentionally as you upgrade your thoughts. A transformative shift happens when you realize that your mind listens to the way you handle setbacks. If you treat every setback as a sign of inadequacy, your thinking becomes rigid and fearful. If you treat setbacks as information, your thinking becomes adaptive and strong. This perspective doesn't eliminate challenges, but it changes your relationship with them. Challenges become part of your mental training instead of evidence against your progress. Over time, this creates a mindset that is both grounded and courageous. Your thinking evolves significantly when you stop comparing your journey to others. Comparison distorts your internal compass by directing your attention outward rather than inward. When you redirect that attention back to your own path, you regain clarity about what truly matters. This clarity allows you to move at your own pace without feeling pressured by external timelines. The more you honor your personal process, the more aligned your thinking becomes. In that alignment, confidence naturally grows. Unlocking the switch also requires embracing the idea that growth is an ongoing process. You don't flip the switch once and call it complete. You return to it continually, refining your thinking as you evolve. Each stage of your life reveals new layers of understanding and new areas for improvement. This ongoing commitment prevents stagnation and keeps your mind flexible. The more you engage with this process, the more natural it becomes to think in ways that support your highest potential. The switch that changes how you think is a commitment to conscious interpretation. It is the willingness to pause before reacting, to reflect before believing, and to choose thoughts that serve your growth. This commitment doesn't transform your life overnight, but it sets in motion a process that touches every aspect of who you are. With time, your inner world becomes clearer, stronger, and more aligned with your aspirations. And as your inner world shifts, your outer world begins to reflect that change. When you learn to guide your mind instead of being guided by it, you unlock a form of freedom that can't be taken away. This freedom allows you to create meaning rather than inherit it, to choose direction rather than drift, and to build a life that reflects intention rather than habit. The switch is within you, waiting to be activated by awareness, courage, and consistency. Once you choose to engage it, your path becomes something you shape rather than something you endure. This is where transformation begins. A mind begins to rise the moment it stops accepting its limits as unchangeable. Limits often grow quietly over the years, shaped by experiences that once overwhelmed you or moments when you felt unprepared. What was meant to protect you slowly turns into a barrier that shrinks your sense of possibility. When you start questioning those inherited boundaries, something within you begins expanding. That expansion signals the start of a new era in your inner life, one that is guided by awareness rather than fear. Old limits rarely announce themselves. They blend into your identity until they feel like permanent truths. You might believe you are not capable of certain things simply because you've never tried them. You might think some dreams are out of reach because no one around you ever pursued them. These beliefs disguise themselves as reality, shaping your choices without your permission. As your mind awakens, it begins to separate what is true from what is familiar. This separation is the birthplace of new strength. The rise of a stronger mind begins with recognizing that limits often come from outdated interpretations. Maybe you once failed at something and concluded you never should attempt it again. Maybe someone dismissed your abilities and you internalized their judgment as fact. These interpretations served a purpose at the time, but they no longer define who you are becoming. By noticing how these old judgments still echo inside you, you gain the power to release them. Freedom grows in the space where old conclusions lose their authority. A mind that refuses old limits learns to identify the difference between discomfort and impossibility. Many boundaries are simply areas where you haven't trained your confidence yet. When you interpret discomfort as a warning to retreat, your potential remains untouched. But when you interpret discomfort as a signal that you're stretching into new territory, growth becomes natural. This shift in meaning transforms how you meet challenges. You begin to rise not because you eliminate discomfort, but because you stop fearing it. To rise beyond outdated limits, you must see them clearly. Some limits hide behind frustration, appearing whenever you attempt something slightly beyond your comfort. Others hide behind excuses that feel logical but are rooted in old doubt. The mind becomes stronger when you expose these patterns to the light of awareness. With each pattern you uncover, you gain insight into the beliefs that have quietly shaped your path. And with insight comes the power to choose a different direction. Strength grows when you stop trying to meet old expectations and begin creating new ones. Expectations built from past experiences often keep you tied to small versions of yourself. When you set expectations based on who you wish to become, your mind begins building toward that future. This new orientation rewrites the standards you operate by. Instead of conforming to outdated identities, you step into the emerging version of yourself. The rise begins not with perfection, but with possibility. A rising mind learns to reinterpret resistance. Resistance is normal whenever you challenge old patterns, but it doesn't mean something is wrong. It is simply the mind adjusting to new ways of thinking. When you meet resistance with patience rather than frustration, you allow transformation to unfold more naturally. This patience signals to your inner world that growth is safe. Over time, resistance becomes less intimidating and more familiar, serving as confirmation that you are expanding beyond previous boundaries. Old limits lose their power when you stop using past experiences as evidence for your future. The mind tends to project forward using outdated information, repeating the same stories even when they no longer apply. When you interrupt this habit, you reclaim the ability to imagine new outcomes. Imagination becomes a tool for shaping direction instead of a place to relive old fears. This shift opens the mental space required for courage to take root. From that root, new possibilities begin to flourish. A rising mind refuses to identify itself with old failures. Failure is an event, not a definition. Yet people often carry it as a personal label. When you detach your identity from moments that didn't go as planned, you regain the confidence to try again. Trying again is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of resilience. With resilience, the mind adapts to challenge rather than retreating from it. This adaptation strengthens your inner foundation. Breaking old limits requires giving yourself permission to grow beyond the version of you that others recognized. Sometimes the people around you expect you to remain the same because it's comfortable for them. Their expectations can become silent walls around your potential. When you stop allowing those expectations to shape your choices, you liberate your inner direction. You learn to value your own evolution more than the comfort it provides others. That shift creates a deeper sense of authenticity. A rising mind learns to embrace the unknown. The unknown is often where your greatest growth waits, yet it feels intimidating because it lacks guarantees. When you stop demanding certainty before taking action, you discover that courage grows with movement, not with waiting. Each step into unfamiliar territory adds to your inner stability. Over time, the unknown becomes less threatening and more inspiring. You realize it holds possibilities that old limits kept out of reach. To rise, your mind must learn the difference between limits that protect you and limits that shrink you. Some boundaries are healthy and grounded in wisdom, while others are built from old wounds. When you examine your limits with honesty, you begin to categorize them correctly. You hold on to the ones that serve your well-being and release the ones that hold you back. This balanced approach prevents reckless decisions while still allowing significant inner expansion. Growth becomes both grounded and empowered. A mind that refuses its old limits commits to steady, patient transformation. Growth does not always appear dramatic. Sometimes it unfolds in subtle shifts that accumulate over time. Each small shift contributes to a larger transformation that becomes visible only in hindsight. Patience allows you to continue evolving, even when the process feels slow. With patience, your inner momentum stays alive, gradually dissolving the barriers that once defined your comfort zone. The rise of a stronger mind often begins with small acts of courage. These acts might involve standing up for yourself, trying something unfamiliar, or refusing to accept a limiting belief. Each courageous choice teaches your mind that you are capable of more than you previously assumed. Confidence grows from these experiences, forming a new internal narrative. Over time, this narrative becomes the foundation for bigger decisions and bolder steps. As your mind rises, you start recognizing the subtle power of self-trust. Self-trust grows when your actions align with your intentions, creating a sense of inner reliability. When you trust yourself, external opinions lose their ability to determine your choices. You become less dependent on validation and more connected to your own intuition. This inner stability gives you the strength to challenge limits that once felt permanent. Self-trust becomes one of your greatest sources of power. A rising mind becomes more aware of the language it uses internally. Words shape perception, and the phrases you repeat to yourself influence how you meet challenges. When your internal language shifts from limitation to possibility, your emotional responses begin to shift as well. You stop approaching life from a place of avoidance and start engaging it with curiosity. This change in language transforms your mental environment, creating a space where growth feels natural. In that space, your capacity expands. Transformation deepens when you stop trying to avoid mistakes and start learning from them. Perfectionism often reinforces old limits by convincing you that progress must be flawless. But real growth comes from experimentation, missteps, and course corrections. When you view mistakes as information rather than evidence of inadequacy, your mind becomes more agile. Agility allows you to adapt quickly, making you less afraid of unknown territory. This adaptability accelerates your rise. A mind that refuses its old limits learns to challenge the belief that change must be dramatic to be meaningful. Small improvements compound over time, creating profound shifts in how you think and what you believe is possible. When you focus on consistent progress rather than instant transformation, your mind begins to relax into the process. This relaxed mindset allows you to sustain growth without burning out. Over time, these small increments reshape your entire inner landscape. The rise of your mind becomes most visible when you stop operating from fear and start operating from potential. Fear restricts your vision, narrowing your options and reinforcing old boundaries. Potential expands your awareness, helping you see opportunities where fear only sees risk. When you shift your internal orientation toward possibility, your decisions become more aligned with your future than your past. This alignment gradually dissolves the limits you once believed were unbreakable. A mind that refuses its old limits awakens to its own authority. You realize that your identity is not defined by past experiences, but by the choices you make going forward. You gain the clarity to design new beliefs that support your evolution. With each new belief, your inner world expands, making room for thoughts and possibilities that once seemed unreachable. This is the rise that changes everything. When your mind rises beyond what once constrained it, you step into a version of yourself that feels more grounded, more capable, and more aligned with who you truly are. Old limits lose their power because you no longer see them as walls, but as illusions that dissolve under awareness. Your potential begins to unfold naturally as you trust your ability to grow. This is the essence of a mind awakened to its own strength. Possibility often hides in the corners of your life that you've overlooked for years. These corners may feel ordinary or unimportant, yet they carry potential waiting to be recognized. The mind tends to focus on familiar paths, assuming they are the only ones available. But when you expand your awareness, new layers of opportunity begin to reveal themselves. This expansion shifts how you interpret your environment, turning overlooked areas into sources of growth. Life becomes richer when you train yourself to look beyond the obvious. Many people search for breakthroughs in dramatic places, believing that transformation must come from something big. Yet the most meaningful shifts often emerge from simple insights hidden in daily experiences. When you stop expecting opportunity to shout and start learning to listen for quieter signals, your perception becomes sharper. With that sharpness, you notice openings that were once invisible. Seeing possibility requires stepping outside the boundaries of your habitual thinking. Habitual thinking narrows your vision by predicting outcomes based on past patterns. When you break this loop, you give your mind permission to explore unfamiliar interpretations. Unfamiliar interpretations expand your internal landscape, allowing creativity to emerge more freely. As creativity expands, new options begin to surface effortlessly. This openness becomes a guiding force in your inner evolution. You begin to notice more possibilities when you stop assuming you already know how things will turn out. Predicting the future based on old conclusions blinds you to new outcomes. When you approach situations with curiosity instead of certainty, your mind becomes more flexible. Flexibility allows you to see potential in scenarios you previously dismissed. With this shift, even small experiences become gateways to new understanding. Curiosity transforms what you see. Your environment is filled with signals of potential, but these signals are often missed because your attention is elsewhere. When your thoughts are consumed by worries or assumptions, you overlook opportunities that sit directly in front of you. The mind sees what it expects, not necessarily what exists. When you adjust your expectations to include possibility, your internal filter changes. That change allows new pathways to enter your awareness naturally. Possibility reveals itself when you give yourself permission to imagine alternatives. Many limits come from assuming that your current perspective is the only valid one. But every situation has multiple interpretations, and each interpretation opens a different door. When you explore these alternatives intentionally, you discover options you never considered. This exploration strengthens your decision-making by widening the range of potential outcomes. With practice, imagining alternatives becomes instinctive. You begin to see more possibility when you stop viewing obstacles as final barriers. Obstacles can often guide you toward new solutions that would not exist without the challenge. When you shift your mindset from resistance to exploration, challenges become catalysts. They push you to think creatively, adapt quickly, and seek paths you previously ignored. Through this process, your mind becomes stronger and more innovative. Obstacles transform into stepping stones. Possibility expands when you release the belief that opportunities must appear perfect. Opportunities often begin as small openings, not fully formed paths. When you dismiss these openings because they feel incomplete, you miss the chance to build something meaningful. Growth usually starts with something imperfect that requires your participation to develop. When you embrace these beginnings, you unlock doors that once seemed closed. The willingness to start imperfectly becomes a powerful asset. Seeing possibility in new places requires paying attention to patterns in your life. Patterns reveal areas of repetition that might contain hidden insights. When you observe these patterns without judgment, you begin to recognize what needs to change. This awareness can uncover opportunities for improvement or expansion that you never noticed. Patterns serve as maps that point toward new potential. By following these maps, you discover directions that enrich your journey. Your emotional responses can reveal areas where possibility is waiting. Moments of envy, frustration, or longing often highlight desires you've suppressed. Instead of pushing these emotions away, you can view them as signals pointing toward unexplored aspirations. When you explore the meaning behind these signals, you uncover dreams you never fully acknowledged. These dreams carry seeds of possibility waiting to be nurtured. Emotional awareness becomes a guide toward deeper fulfillment. Possibility becomes clearer when you stop defining yourself by past limitations. Your identity evolves with every new experience, yet old labels can restrict your view of what's possible. When you release these labels, you create mental space for new capacities to emerge. This openness allows you to experiment with new roles, skills, and directions. As you explore these new possibilities, your confidence grows. Confidence fuels your willingness to continue expanding. Seeing possibility in unexpected places often begins with becoming more present. The present moment carries information that is unavailable when your mind drifts into regret or anticipation. Presence sharpens your perception, helping you notice subtle opportunities. These opportunities might appear through conversations, observations, or unexpected insights. By grounding yourself in the moment, You access clarity that opens new pathways. Presence becomes a doorway to unseen potential. Possibility expands when you challenge the belief that growth must follow a predictable route. Many people assume success requires a linear path, which prevents them from exploring unconventional options. When you free yourself from this assumption, you discover that progress often comes from unexpected directions. Unpredictable paths allow creativity to flourish and resilience to deepen. These paths introduce you to opportunities that structure alone would never reveal. Flexibility becomes the foundation of growth. You begin to see new possibilities when you learn to question your automatic reactions. Automatic reactions reflect old interpretations rather than present truth. When you pause before responding, you create space to see the situation more clearly. This pause allows you to identify potential solutions or insights that would be hidden in a reactive state. Over time, this practice strengthens your clarity and expands your vision. Conscious responding replaces unconscious habit. Possibility grows when you engage your curiosity with intention. Curiosity invites exploration and dissolves the fear of the unknown. When you allow yourself to follow your curiosity, you discover new interests, talents, and directions. These discoveries broaden your sense of what you are capable of. As your capabilities expand, so does your confidence in your ability to navigate new territory. Seeing possibility requires recognizing that your perspective is only one of many. When you expose yourself to new ideas, people, and experiences, your worldview begins to stretch. This stretching reveals alternatives that were previously hidden behind familiar routines. The more you broaden your exposure, the wider the range of possibilities you can perceive. Through this openness, your thinking becomes more dynamic. Dynamic thinking creates new pathways for evolution. Possibility appears more easily when you release the pressure to have everything figured out. The need for certainty can blind you to emerging opportunities that require time to develop. When you allow yourself to move forward with partial clarity, you give space for new insights to arise. This openness reduces anxiety and increases adaptability. Over time, you learn to trust the unfolding process. That trust invites possibility to meet you where you are. You start noticing possibility in new places when you shift your focus from limitation to potential. Limitation narrows your attention to what isn't working or what might go wrong. Potential widens your attention to what could grow or improve. This shift doesn't ignore challenges, it reframes them. Reframing helps you see opportunities embedded within difficulty. With practice, this perspective becomes your natural way of meeting the world. Possibility often emerges from connections you've overlooked. Conversations, relationships, and interactions can reveal unexpected openings when you listen with intention. People around you carry knowledge and experiences that can spark new ideas. When you engage with others from a place of curiosity rather than assumption, you uncover insights that expand your understanding. These connections become bridges to new possibilities. The more you engage, the more expansive your world becomes. Seeing possibility in places you never looked before requires trusting that your life holds more potential than you've allowed yourself to believe. This trust gives you the courage to explore new directions, reinterpret challenges, and examine areas you once ignored. As your vision expands, so does your capacity to create meaningful change. You begin to live with a sense of openness that transforms your inner and outer world. This openness becomes the foundation of an empowered mind. When you learn to look beyond the familiar, the world reveals itself in richer layers than you ever imagined. Possibility surrounds you, waiting to be acknowledged and acted upon. As your perception evolves, so does your experience of life. You shift from feeling confined by your circumstances to realizing you can shape them. This realization opens doors that once felt locked. Seeing possibility becomes a way of living, not just a skill you practice. Life begins to transform the moment you start seeing it through a new lens. This lens isn't a physical object, but a shift in perception that changes how you interpret every experience. When your perspective changes, familiar situations reveal different meanings, and challenges take on new shape. What once felt overwhelming can begin to feel workable, and what once felt ordinary can take on deeper significance. This subtle adjustment becomes the foundation for profound change. From that foundation, your entire inner world starts to realign. A new lens allows you to see yourself with more clarity. Many people view themselves through outdated images shaped by old experiences and past criticism. When you adopt a fresh perspective, you begin to recognize qualities you overlooked before. You see strengths you minimized and possibilities you previously ignored. This new self-awareness strengthens your confidence and reshapes your expectations. So does your capacity to navigate life's complexities. Seeing through a new lens shifts how you understand your past. Instead of replaying old events with the same conclusions, you begin extracting lessons that empower you. Experiences that once felt like burdens become sources of insight. Pain that lingered in your story gains new meaning, offering wisdom you were unable to access before. This reinterpretation helps you release old emotional weight. By lightening that load, you create space for new possibilities to enter. A new lens also changes how you approach relationships. When your perspective expands, you become more aware of the intentions and fears that influence your interactions. This awareness reduces unnecessary conflict and increases understanding. You stop taking things personally and begin recognizing the inner battles others may be facing. This clarity improves your communication and deepens your connections. With deeper connections, your relationships become more supportive and less draining. The lens you use determines how you respond to challenges. Through an old lens, challenges may seem like threats or proof of inadequacy. Through a new lens, challenges become information that helps you grow. You begin to assess difficulties with more patience and strategy. Instead of reacting impulsively, you respond with intention. This shift makes setbacks feel less final and more manageable. Over time, resilience becomes one of your strongest qualities. A new lens reveals opportunities in places you once dismissed. When you stop assuming that your possibilities are limited, you start noticing new directions that were always within reach. These opportunities might appear small at first, but they carry the potential to reshape your path. By acting on them, you demonstrate trust in your evolving perspective. Each step you take reinforces your ability to expand beyond old boundaries. Growth becomes a natural part of your daily life. Perspective influences your emotional patterns. Through an old lens, emotions can feel uncontrollable or confusing. Through a new lens, emotions become signals that point to unmet needs or hidden desires. This understanding helps you navigate your feelings with more clarity and less resistance. You stop fearing emotions and begin using them as guides. This emotional intelligence strengthens your ability to remain grounded in difficult situations. Groundedness becomes your anchor. A new lens sharpens your sense of gratitude. Gratitude grows when you see value in situations you once overlooked. Simple moments take on richness, and everyday experiences feel meaningful. Instead of focusing solely on what is missing, you appreciate what is present. This shift elevates your mood and increases your overall satisfaction with life. Gratitude makes your perspective more balanced and resilient. With this balance, your mind becomes more adaptable. The way you view time also changes with a new lens. You stop rushing to reach the next milestone and begin appreciating the pace of your own development. Growth becomes less about speed and more about alignment. You learn to trust the timing of your life, recognizing that each phase carries its own purpose. This trust reduces anxiety and strengthens patience. With patience, your journey feels more intentional and less pressured. A new lens helps you redefine success. Success shifts from external validation to internal fulfillment. You begin valuing progress over perfection and authenticity over appearance. This shift reduces the pressure to meet unrealistic standards and allows you to focus on what truly resonates with you. When your definition of success aligns with your values, your efforts feel meaningful rather than forced. Fulfillment replaces comparison, creating a deeper sense of purpose. Perspective shapes the meaning you give to your actions. Through an old lens, routines can feel monotonous or insignificant. Through a new lens, each action becomes part of a larger picture that supports your growth. Small habits gain importance because you understand how they contribute to your long-term vision. This awareness motivates you to stay consistent even when progress feels slow. Consistency builds momentum and strengthens your direction. Direction becomes clearer with each intentional step. A new lens reveals how much power you have over your inner world. You realize that your thoughts influence your experience far more than external circumstances. With this awareness, you stop waiting for life to change before you feel better. Instead, you adjust your perspective to change how you interpret what is happening. This shift empowers you to take responsibility for your emotional and mental well-being. Responsibility becomes a source of liberation rather than pressure. When your lens changes, your relationship with uncertainty transforms. Uncertainty no longer feels like a threat, but like an open field of possibility. You stop needing all the answers before you move forward. This openness invites curiosity, which leads to discovery. The more comfortable you become with uncertainty, the more confident you feel navigating new territory. Confidence grows from your willingness to explore rather than your need for control. A new lens strengthens your intuition. Intuition becomes clearer when your mind is no longer clouded by old beliefs or limiting interpretations. You start recognizing subtle signals that guide you toward aligned choices. These signals may come as feelings, insights, or inner nudges. When you trust them, your decisions become more aligned with your authentic self. Alignment helps you avoid paths that drain you and choose ones that nourish you. Intuition becomes a trusted companion. Perspective influences how you handle transitions. Through an old lens, transitions may feel disruptive or destabilizing. Through a new lens, transitions become opportunities to grow into a more aligned version of yourself. Change becomes less frightening because you understand that it is part of your evolution. With this understanding, you navigate transitions with more grace and less resistance. Grace makes the journey smoother and more meaningful. A new lens changes the way you interpret your potential. Instead of viewing your abilities as fixed, you begin seeing them as expandable. You recognize that your skills can grow with effort, patience, and curiosity. This growth mindset encourages you to try new things without fearing failure. Each attempt expands your capacity and deepens your self-trust. Over time, potential becomes something you actively shape rather than something you passively accept. Seeing through a new lens amplifies your sense of agency. You realize that you are not simply reacting to your life, but participating in its creation. This awareness helps you make decisions that support your long-term well-being. You stop relying on circumstances to determine your path and begin choosing your direction intentionally. This agency fuels your confidence and reinforces your sense of inner strength. Strength becomes a natural part of your identity. A new lens helps you recognize how interconnected everything in your life truly is. Thoughts influence actions, actions shape habits, and habits build your future. When you understand this chain, you begin treating each step with care. You see how small adjustments compound into meaningful change. This holistic awareness encourages you to align all areas of your life with your values. Alignment brings a sense of harmony that touches every aspect of your experience. Perspective becomes a tool for rewriting your story. When you stop viewing your past as something that defines you, you gain the freedom to reinterpret it. You see how each event contributed to who you are becoming, even the difficult ones. This reinterpretation softens old wounds and strengthens your resilience. As your story shifts, your identity naturally expands. Expansion opens doors you once believed were closed forever. A new lens rebuilds your entire life by reshaping the way you see yourself, your experiences, and your possibilities. Transformation becomes less about changing your circumstances and more about changing how you interpret them. With each shift in perspective, your inner world grows more spacious and empowered. That inner growth is mirrored in the choices you make and the direction you take. Through this lens, life becomes something you consciously design. As your perspective evolves, you discover that the world has been offering more opportunities, insights, and pathways than you ever realized. The new lens doesn't give you a different life. It helps you see the one you have with greater clarity and potential. With this clarity, you move through life with more intention and confidence. You begin building a reality that reflects your growth rather than your limitations. This is how a new lens reshapes everything you touch. Shifting from reaction to intention begins with understanding how much of your life is influenced by automatic responses. These responses often form long before you realize they are shaping your behavior. When events trigger these patterns, you may feel as if you have no control, acting out of habit rather than choice. But awareness shows you where your reactions originate. With that awareness, you discover the possibility of responding differently. This discovery marks the beginning of conscious transformation. Reaction is usually driven by old emotions that surface faster than thought. These emotions can overwhelm your clarity, leading you to act in ways that don't reflect who you truly want to be. When you pause long enough to observe these feelings, you create space between the trigger and your response. This space gives you access to perspective that would otherwise be hidden. Perspective allows intention to enter. Intention guides you toward choices that align with your values. Moving into intention requires slowing down your internal pace. Many reactions come from rushing through moments without noticing what is happening inside you. When you slow down, you can feel your impulses rise before they turn into action. This pause reveals what your mind is trying to protect or avoid. By understanding this, you can choose a response that reflects strength rather than fear. Slowness becomes a tool for clarity. Intention grows as you learn to observe your thoughts without immediately believing them. Not every thought that appears deserves your energy or action. Some thoughts arise from old insecurities, while others come from outdated assumptions. When you step back and watch them as temporary mental events, they lose their power to control your decisions. This detachment opens room for intentional guidance. Thought becomes information, not instruction. To shift into intention, you must learn to recognize the physical sensations that accompany reaction. Your body often signals tension, urgency, or defensiveness before your mind forms a conclusion. These signals act as invitations to pause. When you listen to them instead of pushing through, you gain deeper insight into your internal state. This awareness helps you choose responses that support your well-being. The body becomes a quiet teacher. Intention strengthens when you understand your deeper motives. Reaction often comes from surface-level emotions, but intention comes from alignment with what matters most to you. When you act from your deeper values, your decisions feel grounded and meaningful. You stop reacting to every impulse and begin responding from a place of clarity. This alignment builds inner stability. Stability supports consistent growth. A major part of shifting from reaction to intention involves releasing the need to control everything. Reaction often stems from fear of uncertainty or discomfort. When you learn to trust the process of life, you stop trying to force outcomes through impulsive responses. This trust allows you to move with more confidence and less anxiety. Confidence encourages thoughtful decisions rather than rushed reactions. Trust becomes a foundation for intentional living. When you shift into intention, you become more aware of how your emotions influence your choices. Emotional awareness doesn't mean suppressing your feelings, it means understanding them. When you understand your emotions, you can respond in ways that honor them without letting them dictate your actions. This balanced approach allows you to navigate challenges with composure. Composure becomes a marker of your growth. Intention deepens when you practice responding rather than reacting in everyday situations. Small interactions provide opportunities to strengthen your awareness. Whether it's a stressful message, an unexpected comment, or a moment of frustration, you can choose to pause and reflect. Over time, these small moments accumulate into significant transformation. Reaction often comes from stories you tell yourself about what is happening. These stories may be exaggerated, outdated, or untrue. When you challenge these narratives, you create room for new interpretations. New interpretations shift your emotional experience and change how you respond. This ability to reinterpret events is a key part of intentional living. Flexibility in meaning leads to flexibility in action. Shifting to intention requires letting go of the belief that reacting quickly makes you strong. True strength comes from responding thoughtfully, not impulsively. When you slow down and choose your actions consciously, you demonstrate mastery over your internal world. This mastery allows you to navigate complex situations without losing your center. Staying centered becomes a powerful form of presence. Presence enhances your influence. Intention becomes more natural when you stop defending your ego. Many reactions come from trying to protect an image of yourself rather than addressing the real situation. When you let go of this need, your responses become more honest and grounded. Honesty creates clarity in your relationships and within yourself. Clarity supports healthier decisions. Ego fades as authenticity rises. Shifting from reaction to intention changes how you handle conflict. Conflict becomes less about proving a point and more about understanding what needs attention. When you listen with the intention to understand rather than react, communication becomes deeper. This deepened communication reduces misunderstandings and fosters connection. Connection makes conflict less threatening. Through intention, tension transforms into growth. Intention helps you break cycles that once felt unchangeable. Cycles of frustration, avoidance, or self-sabotage lose their power when you approach them with awareness. Each time you replace a reaction with a conscious response, the cycle weakens. Over time, you create new patterns that support your development. These new patterns build your confidence. Confidence reinforces your intentional choices. A life lived with intention feels more spacious. Reaction compresses your energy, making you feel rushed or trapped. Intention opens your internal environment, giving you room to think, feel, and choose. With this space, your decisions become more aligned with who you want to be. Alignment creates a sense of inner freedom. Freedom becomes your natural way of moving through the world. Shifting from reaction to intention allows you to access deeper creativity. Reaction limits your thinking to familiar patterns, while intention invites new possibilities. When you pause long enough to choose your response, you open pathways the mind usually overlooks. These pathways lead to insights, solutions, and ideas that expand your potential. Creativity flourishes when your mind is not stuck in automatic loops. Intentional thinking unlocks innovation. Intention transforms your relationship with time. Reaction pulls you into urgency, making you feel as if everything requires immediate action. Intention helps you recognize which moments truly require attention and which do not. This clarity reduces stress and increases effectiveness. You start directing your time in ways that reflect your priorities. Purposefulness replaces panic. As you strengthen your ability to choose intention over reaction, your self-respect grows. You realize that you are capable of directing your inner world rather than being controlled by it. This self-respect influences every area of your life, from your relationships to your personal goals. You start treating yourself with greater care and discipline. Discipline becomes a form of self-support rather than restriction. Your choices reflect your growth. Intention becomes a guiding force when you learn to meet discomfort with openness. Reaction tries to escape discomfort, while intention seeks to understand it. When you approach uncomfortable moments with curiosity, you discover insights that help you grow. These insights reduce fear and expand confidence. Over time, discomfort becomes a doorway instead of a barrier. Each doorway invites you into a stronger version of yourself. Shifting from reaction to intention is about reclaiming ownership of your inner life. Instead of being pulled by impulses, you become guided by awareness and purpose. This shift doesn't eliminate challenges, but it changes how you meet them. You no longer feel powerless in the face of your emotions or circumstances. With intention, you become an active participant in your life rather than a passive observer. That change transforms everything. When you live from intention, your choices reflect your deepest values instead of your temporary feelings. This alignment brings peace, confidence, and clarity to your daily experience. You move through life with a sense of direction rather than drifting through habits. This sense of direction becomes your compass, guiding you toward a life shaped by consciousness rather than reaction. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Self-honesty is the doorway to a kind of clarity that many people spend years searching for. It requires looking inward without distortion, without excuses, and without the need to justify old patterns. When you choose to see yourself accurately, your inner world becomes less confusing. It becomes easier to understand why you think, feel, and react the way you do. This understanding lays the foundation for powerful transformation. Clarity grows where denial once lived. The breakthrough born from self-honesty begins with admitting what you've been avoiding. Avoidance creates shadows in the mind, dark spaces where truth gets buried under fear or habit. When you shine awareness into those spaces, you discover insights that were hidden from your conscious view. These insights may feel uncomfortable at first because they challenge your familiar identity, but discomfort signals that you are finally approaching what matters. From that approach, growth becomes possible. Self-honesty reveals the stories you've been telling yourself that no longer serve you. These stories often form during moments of vulnerability, shaping your beliefs about what you can or cannot do. With honesty, you can see where these narratives exaggerate your limitations or minimize your strengths. Once the stories are exposed, they lose their ability to confine you. This exposure gives you the freedom to rewrite your internal script. A new script leads to a new direction. This kind of honesty also helps you recognize patterns you've repeated without noticing. Patterns become automatic when you stop questioning them, even if they undermine your well-being. When you take an honest look at your habits, you understand what drives them. Some patterns may come from fear, others from old wounds, and others from unmet needs. Recognizing these origins helps you approach change with compassion rather than self-blame. Compassion makes transformation sustainable. Self-honesty empowers you to see your motives clearly. Sometimes you pursue things for validation, escape, or comfort, rather than genuine desire. When you acknowledge these motives openly, you gain a deeper understanding of your choices. This understanding allows you to recalibrate your direction so that your actions reflect your authentic values. With this alignment, your decisions feel more purposeful. Purpose strengthens your sense of identity. The breakthrough grows stronger when you accept responsibility for your inner world. Responsibility does not mean self-criticism. It means acknowledging your influence over your thoughts and behaviors. When you stop attributing your struggles solely to circumstances, you reclaim the ability to change them. This shift brings a sense of empowerment that denial cannot offer. Empowerment encourages you to take steps that support your growth. Each step reinforces your agency. Self-honesty requires the courage to admit where you've held yourself back. This admission is not a confession of weakness, but a recognition of potential. When you see the ways you've limited yourself, you also see the possibilities that open when you stop doing so. This recognition creates a powerful emotional shift. You begin to feel more capable and less trapped by old beliefs. Capability expands your sense of opportunity. Looking at your truth directly brings you face to face with your unexpressed desires. These desires often hide behind doubt or fear of failure. When you acknowledge them without judgment, you discover what your heart has been trying to communicate. Honoring these desires strengthens your connection to yourself. This connection fuels motivation that feels natural rather than forced. Motivation rooted in honesty carries lasting momentum. Self-honesty helps you recognize where you've been settling for less than you need. Settling often happens quietly, disguised as acceptance or practicality. When you admit that you deserve more than minimal fulfillment, you create space for higher expectations. Higher expectations guide your choices toward environments and relationships that nourish you. This nourishment enhances your well-being in ways you may not have imagined. Well-being becomes the standard. The breakthrough accelerates when you stop hiding from your emotional truth. Emotions that are ignored tend to grow louder in the background of your life. When you acknowledge them, even the difficult ones, their grip weakens. This acknowledgement allows you to move through them with clarity instead of confusion. You gain insight into what your emotions are trying to reveal. Insight brings emotional maturity. Self-honesty reveals the difference between what you want and what you've been settling for out of habit. When those two realities clash, you feel an inner friction that demands attention. Honoring that friction is a step toward alignment. When your actions match your deeper desires, your life begins to feel more coherent. Coherence reduces internal conflict. Reduced conflict opens space for growth. This honesty also exposes the excuses that have kept you from acting. Excuses are often subtle, convincing, and wrapped in logic, but they quietly drain your potential. When you recognize them for what they are, you disarm their influence. Without excuses, you are left with truth, and truth invites action. Action becomes clearer and more deliberate. Deliberate action creates momentum. Self-honesty allows you to see the ways you've underestimated yourself. Many people shrink their abilities to avoid disappointment or judgment. When you admit that you are capable of more than you've allowed yourself to believe, your mindset shifts. You start challenging yourself with intention rather than fear. This challenge strengthens your resilience. Resilience expands your capacity. A breakthrough occurs when you recognize the beliefs you inherited rather than chose. These beliefs can shape your behavior without ever being questioned. When you examine them honestly, you can decide which ones align with your present self. Releasing inherited beliefs frees you from obligations that never belonged to you. Freedom creates room for new identity. New identity supports your evolution. Self-honesty transforms your relationship with mistakes. Instead of interpreting them as evidence of inadequacy, you see them as signals that guide your development. This shift reduces shame and increases learning. When you approach mistakes with openness, you extract lessons that enhance your future decisions. Learning becomes a natural part of your journey. Your journey becomes more empowering. This honesty invites you to acknowledge your needs without guilt. Many people suppress their needs to appear strong or avoid burdening others. When you admit what you truly require, you create healthier boundaries and more authentic connections. These boundaries protect your energy and support your growth. Authenticity deepens your relationships. Deeper relationships nurture your well-being. Self-honesty helps you understand what motivates your fear. Fear becomes less intimidating when you identify its source. Often, fear protects a part of you that feels vulnerable. When you recognize this, you can respond to fear with understanding instead of avoidance. This understanding dissolves its power. As fear weakens, courage emerges. Courage fuels transformation. Honesty with yourself also reveals the strengths you've ignored. You may have talents or qualities that you dismissed because they didn't fit others' expectations. When you acknowledge these strengths, you rediscover parts of yourself that were waiting to be recognized. This recognition builds confidence in your natural abilities. Confidence encourages you to express yourself more fully. Full expression expands your influence. The breakthrough deepens when you stop pretending you are somewhere you're not. Admitting your current position emotionally, mentally, or practically creates a powerful starting point. You no longer waste energy upholding illusions. Instead, you invest that energy into building where you genuinely want to go. This grounded approach accelerates progress. Progress becomes more intentional and consistent. Self-honesty becomes a transformative force that reshapes your entire inner world. It clears away confusion, dissolves denial, and reveals the path that aligns with your truth. When you live from this truth, your decisions, relationships, and goals become more meaningful. You no longer feel divided within yourself. Alignment becomes your natural state. When you allow self-honesty to guide your growth, you unlock a mental breakthrough that elevates every part of your life. You see yourself clearly, act intentionally, and move with a sense of inner freedom that cannot be taken away. This freedom allows you to build a future shaped by truth rather than fear. The more honest you become, the more powerful your transformation becomes. Self-honesty becomes your gateway to the life you were meant to build. Choosing power over fear begins with understanding how fear operates within your mind. Fear often disguises itself as caution, logic, or protection, making it difficult to recognize. When you start observing your inner reactions, you notice the subtle ways fear influences your decisions. Awareness reveals how many choices are shaped by avoidance rather than intention. Once you see this, you gain the ability to question fear's authority. Questioning weakens its grip. Training your mind to choose power means recognizing that fear is not the enemy. It is a signal. Fear highlights areas where your confidence needs reinforcement or where old wounds are still active. Instead of running from these signals, you learn to approach them with curiosity. Curiosity dissolves the rigidity that fear creates. In that openness, power begins to rise. Power grows when you refuse to retreat from your inner truth. Fear often emerges when you're moving towards something meaningful. Growth naturally activates resistance because it pushes you beyond familiar limits. When you understand this, you stop interpreting fear as a warning to stop and start viewing it as confirmation that you're expanding. Discomfort becomes a sign of progress rather than danger. Progress strengthens your inner resolve. Choosing power requires strengthening your ability to stay present in difficult moments. Fear thrives when your mind projects imagined threats into the future. When you bring your attention back to the present, you reduce fear's influence. The present moment is manageable, even when challenging. From this grounded place, you can make decisions that reflect clarity instead of panic. Groundedness becomes a powerful form of stability. Your mind learns to choose power when you stop feeding fear with catastrophic thinking. Catastrophic thinking exaggerates outcomes and blinds you to your abilities. When you challenge these exaggerated thoughts, you discover that many fears are built on speculation rather than truth. This discovery restores your sense of capability. Capability shifts your mindset from helplessness to resilience. Resilience strengthens your path forward. Training your mind means teaching it new associations with fear. Instead of linking fear to retreat, you begin linking fear to opportunity. This reframing does not eliminate fear, but it changes how you respond to it. With practice, your mind becomes more willing to step toward challenges rather than away from them. This willingness builds confidence through experience. Confidence grows from action taken in the presence of fear. Choosing power involves confronting the beliefs that fuel your fear. These beliefs may tell you that you are not ready, not skilled enough, or not deserving of success. When you examine them honestly, you begin to see their roots in past experiences rather than present reality. This distinction frees you from letting old narratives define your future. Once freed, you can replace limiting beliefs with ones that empower you. Empowering beliefs shape empowering behavior. Fear loses strength when you stop avoiding it. Avoidance reinforces fear by confirming the mind's belief that the feared situation is unbearable. When you gently face what you've been avoiding, you discover that it is far more manageable than you imagined. This realization expands your inner courage. Courage grows each time you choose engagement over avoidance. Engagement becomes a pathway toward your fullest potential. Your mind chooses power more easily when you nurture self-trust. Fear often arises from the belief that you cannot handle what might happen. When you build evidence that you can navigate challenges, your trust in yourself deepens. This trust acts as an internal anchor during uncertain moments. Anchored confidence reduces the influence of fear. Reduced influence gives your power room to rise. Training your mind involves building emotional flexibility. Fear becomes overwhelming when you feel rigid and unable to adapt. Flexibility helps you adjust your perspective, strategy, and expectations as situations evolve. This adaptability reduces anxiety because you know you can handle change. Adaptability becomes a psychological strength. Strength supports your decision to choose power even when fear is present. Choosing power requires understanding that fear is often tied to imagined scenarios rather than actual threat. Your mind creates vivid outcomes that feel real, even when they lack evidence. When you challenge these mental projections, they lose intensity. As their intensity fades, your emotional state becomes more manageable. Manageability allows you to think clearly and act intentionally. Clear thinking reveals your inner strength. Your mind becomes stronger when you separate fear from intuition. Fear is reactive and loud, while intuition is calm and precise. When you learn to distinguish the two, you stop mistaking fear for guidance. This clarity helps you make decisions that align with your deepest values rather than your temporary anxieties. Alignment reinforces your sense of authority. Authority over your inner world fuels empowerment. Training your mind means becoming comfortable with uncertainty. Fear often thrives on the desire for guarantees. When you accept that uncertainty is part of growth, fear loses one of its strongest weapons. Acceptance creates mental space for creative solutions and new possibilities. These possibilities reveal paths you could not see before. Possibility inspires movement. Movement builds momentum. Power becomes more natural when you practice taking small steps in fearful situations. Each small step demonstrates to your mind that progress is possible even when conditions are not perfect. These steps accumulate, gradually weakening the emotional intensity of fear. Through repetition, your default response shifts from avoidance to engagement. Engagement builds inner strength. Strength becomes your new normal. Your mind learns to choose power when you stay connected to your long-term vision. Fear focuses on immediate discomfort, while power focuses on future growth. When your decisions reflect your larger purpose, fear feels less convincing. Purpose acts as a compass, helping you navigate moments of doubt with clarity. Clarity reduces hesitation. Reduced hesitation supports intentional action. Training your mind requires acknowledging the areas where you've let fear make decisions for you. This acknowledgement is not meant to bring shame but awareness. With awareness, you can reclaim those areas and redirect them toward empowerment. Reclaiming builds a deeper sense of ownership over your life. Ownership shifts your mindset from passive to active. An active mind chooses power more easily. Choosing power means understanding that courage is a practice, not a personality trait. Courage grows each time you show up for yourself despite internal resistance. When you practice courage regularly, it becomes familiar, even comforting. Familiarity weakens fear's influence on your behavior. As fear weakens, your ability to take meaningful risks expands. Expanded ability leads to expanded possibility. Your mind becomes more powerful when you stop expecting fear to disappear. Fear often fades only after you move through it, not before. When you accept this, you stop waiting for perfect emotional conditions to take action. Action in the presence of fear becomes a defining skill. This skill creates breakthroughs in areas where hesitation once held you back. Breakthroughs reinforce your inner power. The shift from fear to power deepens when you surround yourself with people and environments that support your growth. Fear thrives in isolation, but power grows through connection, encouragement, and shared vision. When you allow yourself to be supported, your courage becomes stronger. Support expands your emotional capacity. This expansion makes it easier to confront challenges with confidence. Training your mind to choose power over fear is an ongoing commitment. It is a process of recognizing fear, understanding it, and choosing not to obey it. Through consistent awareness and intentional action, your inner world transforms. You begin operating from strength rather than vulnerability, from clarity rather than confusion. With each choice, your mindset becomes more aligned with who you aspire to be. Choosing power becomes your natural response. When you consistently choose power, your life begins to reflect that inner shift. You feel more grounded, more capable, and more connected to your purpose. Decisions become easier because they are rooted in intention rather than instinctive fear. This shift shapes every aspect of your experience, from your relationships to your aspirations. The more you practice it, the more empowered your life becomes. Power becomes your path forward. Challenges become transformative when you stop viewing them as interruptions and begin seeing them as messages. Each difficulty reveals something about your inner world, your assumptions, your limits, your resilience, or your blind spots. When you interpret challenges this way, they become guides rather than obstacles. This shift allows you to respond with clarity instead of frustration. Clarity unlocks new paths within you. Those paths lead toward deeper insight. Inner direction grows when you understand that challenges often highlight what you have avoided addressing. These moments force your attention to areas of life that need strengthening or healing. Instead of resisting the discomfort, you can approach it with openness. Openness helps you uncover the deeper meaning hidden beneath the surface. With this meaning in hand, you navigate the situation with more purpose. Purpose turns hardship into momentum. Challenges reveal the beliefs that have been shaping your choices. When you face a difficult moment, your instinctive reactions expose the thoughts you've been carrying unconsciously. By examining these reactions, you uncover beliefs that may no longer serve you. This awareness gives you the opportunity to reshape your mindset. A reshaped mindset provides new emotional grounding. Grounding becomes a source of stability. Transforming challenges requires shifting your attention from what is happening to what it is teaching you. Every situation offers a lesson that becomes visible when you observe it without defensiveness. This perspective allows you to step out of a reactive mindset and step into reflection. Reflection reveals what aspects of your character are ready to evolve. Evolution becomes a natural response to adversity. Through this response, you grow stronger. Inner direction becomes clearer when you learn to separate the challenge from your interpretation of it. Often, the event itself is neutral, but your interpretation gives it emotional weight. When you challenge these interpretations, you reduce unnecessary suffering. This reduction creates space for more balanced thinking. Balanced thinking guides your next steps with greater accuracy. Accuracy supports confident action. The way you frame a challenge determines the quality of your response. If you view it as a sign of failure, you shrink. If you view it as a catalyst for growth, you rise. This framing is entirely within your control. By choosing a frame that supports your expansion, you transform adversity into guidance. Guidance helps you navigate uncertainty with resilience. Resilience deepens your inner direction. Challenges can act as mirrors, reflecting aspects of yourself that you've overlooked. These reflections may reveal strength, weakness, or unexplored potential. When you face these reflections honestly, you gain a more accurate understanding of who you are. This understanding becomes a compass for future decisions. Decisions rooted in self-awareness lead to alignment. Alignment brings a sense of steadiness in uncertain times. Inner direction strengthens when you realize that challenges often redirect you towards something better. Sometimes, the path you hoped would work begins to fall apart, not because you failed, but because it was not meant to support your long-term growth. When you trust this redirection, you move through challenges with less resistance. Less resistance creates more emotional energy for problem solving. Problem solving builds confidence in your adaptability. Transforming challenges involves acknowledging that discomfort is not a threat to your well-being. Discomfort signals that you are stepping into unfamiliar territory, which is essential for growth. When you embrace discomfort as a companion rather than an enemy, you access deeper courage. Courage helps you stay grounded in difficult moments. Groundedness allows you to think clearly. Clear thinking leads to meaningful progress. Some challenges show up to strengthen qualities that need development. You may be learning patience, discipline, resilience, or emotional balance without realizing it. When you identify which quality a challenge is strengthening, you gain insight into your current developmental stage. This insight makes the experience feel purposeful rather than random. Purposeful challenges become easier to endure. Endurance becomes part of your inner evolution. Inner direction also emerges when you stop expecting the path to be easy. Growth rarely occurs in comfort. It happens in tension, uncertainty, and rebuilding. Accepting this reality helps you stop fighting the process. When you stop fighting, your energy becomes available for more constructive action. Constructive action propels you forward with intention. Intention replaces frustration with clarity. Transforming challenges requires patience with your own emotional responses. You may feel overwhelmed, discouraged, or confused at times. Instead of judging these reactions, you can view them as temporary states that offer insight. When you allow emotions to flow without resistance, they weaken naturally. This emotional release gives your mind space to regain perspective. Perspective helps you move forward with renewed strength. Inner direction becomes clearer when you recognize that challenges reveal what you truly value. When something is disrupted, you notice how important it actually is to you. This recognition helps you prioritize your energy and effort. Prioritization strengthens your ability to make aligned decisions. Aligned decisions reinforce your sense of purpose. Purpose creates direction that feels authentic. Some challenges push you to develop boundaries that you've previously avoided setting. You may realize that certain people, habits, or environments drain your energy. When a challenge exposes these areas, it gives you permission to make necessary changes. These changes protect your mental and emotional well-being. Protection becomes part of self-respect. Self-respect fuels inner clarity. Transformation occurs when you learn to trust your ability to navigate difficulty. Even when the path feels uncertain, your resilience grows with every challenge you overcome. This resilience becomes a form of inner guidance that strengthens your confidence. Confidence allows you to face future challenges with greater ease. Ease does not mean absence of struggle. It means a stronger inner foundation. A strong foundation supports continued growth. Challenges often require you to develop new strategies that you might not have considered otherwise. When familiar approaches no longer work, your creativity expands to meet the moment. This expansion introduces you to new resources within yourself. These resources become part of your long-term skill set. Each new skill strengthens your sense of capability. Capability fuels long-term transformation. Inner direction reveals itself when you stop viewing challenges as punishments. Instead, you recognize them as invitations to upgrade your mindset and behavior. This recognition shifts the emotional tone of your experience. With each emotional shift, you free your mind from unnecessary resistance. Freedom makes space for insight. Insight leads to clearer choices. Transforming challenges means honoring the part of you that refuses to give up. Even in difficult times, there is a quiet strength within you that keeps moving forward. When you connect with this strength, you realize that you are more capable than you once believed. This realization reshapes your identity. A reshaped identity aligns with greater purpose. Purpose provides steady direction. Inner direction emerges when you allow challenges to refine your character rather than harden it. Hardening closes you off, but refinement shapes you into someone more aware, grounded, and resilient. When you choose refinement, you become more intentional in your responses. Intentional responses create a more empowered life. Empowerment becomes a natural state because you've learned to navigate adversity with wisdom. Transforming challenges into inner direction is about trusting that every experience contains potential. When you approach life with this perspective, nothing feels wasted. Even difficult moments contribute to your development. Over time, you realize that challenges are not detours. They are part of the path. This understanding deepens your connection to yourself. From that connection, your life begins to unfold with clarity and purpose. When challenges become guidance rather than obstacles, your entire inner world shifts. You move through life with a sense of confidence rooted in experience and insight. Each difficulty becomes an opportunity to strengthen your vision, deepen your resilience, and align more fully with your truth. With this mindset, every challenge becomes a step toward your highest direction. Your life transforms from the inside out. New paths often emerge the moment your thinking becomes more expansive. The thoughts you repeat shape the boundaries of what you believe is possible. When those thoughts are restricted by doubt or habit, your opportunities shrink without you realizing it. But when you adopt patterns that encourage exploration, the world begins to look different. You notice openings you once ignored. Thought becomes the architect of new direction. Thought patterns that open new paths begin with curiosity. Curiosity replaces rigid assumptions with open-ended exploration. When you allow yourself to wonder instead of conclude too quickly, your mind becomes more flexible. This flexibility creates space for new insights to emerge. Insights often reveal solutions or ideas that your old mindset could not see. Curiosity becomes a quiet catalyst for growth. Expansive thinking grows when you stop assuming that your first interpretation is the only one. Many people limit their progress because they believe their initial thoughts define reality. But reality often depends on the lens you choose. When you explore multiple perspectives, you find possibilities that were hidden behind your automatic reactions. This exploration reveals alternative routes forward. Alternatives strengthen your ability to adapt. A powerful thought pattern involves asking empowering questions. Instead of asking why things won't work, you ask how they could work. This small shift in language transforms your thinking from limitation to possibility. Empowering questions activate creativity and resourcefulness. They help you look beyond obstacles and see potential solutions. With consistent practice, these questions reshape your mindset into one that expects growth. New paths emerge when you challenge the assumptions that keep you stuck. These assumptions might be rooted in past experiences or external opinions. When you question them honestly, you realize many of them are outdated or inaccurate. This awareness frees you from mental restraints you didn't know you were carrying. Freedom opens space for new ideas and new ambition. Ambition grows from clarity. Thought patterns rooted in gratitude also expand your possibilities. Gratitude shifts your attention from what is missing to what is available. When your mind focuses on opportunity rather than scarcity, you naturally notice more potential around you. This noticing energizes your motivation and strengthens your resilience. Resilience helps you continue exploring even when progress feels slow. Gratitude becomes a grounding force for new beginnings. Open-minded thinking allows you to see potential in unexpected places. When you release the belief that opportunities must appear in specific ways, you invite creativity into your life. Creativity helps you connect ideas that seem unrelated at first. These connections reveal innovative solutions and fresh possibilities. As your thinking becomes more fluid, you find yourself drawn toward paths that once felt invisible. Fluidity becomes your strength. A thought pattern that opens new paths involves embracing experimentation. When you allow yourself to try without demanding perfection, your mind becomes more adventurous. Experimentation removes pressure and replaces it with exploration. Through this exploration, you discover abilities and interests you didn't know you had. These discoveries guide you toward meaningful directions. Growth unfolds through willingness to explore. Thought patterns shift dramatically when you stop using past outcomes as predictors of future success. When you treat each moment as a new opportunity, your mind becomes more open to change. This openness invites courage and encourages forward movement. Movement leads to discovery. Discovery expands your sense of possibility. Optimistic thinking opens paths that pessimism closes. Optimism is not blind positivity. It is the belief that solutions exist even when they are not immediately visible. This belief encourages persistence. When you persist with a hopeful mindset, you navigate obstacles with greater creativity and stamina. Over time, optimism becomes a strategic advantage. It keeps your inner world energized. A transformative thought pattern involves believing that you are capable of learning anything with time and effort. This belief removes the mental ceiling that often limits progress. When you see yourself as adaptable, challenges feel like opportunities to expand rather than threats to avoid. Adaptability enhances your confidence. Confidence fuels your willingness to pursue new directions. Your potential becomes more accessible. Thought patterns rooted in possibility help you notice small openings that can lead to significant change. These openings may appear as ideas, conversations, or unexpected opportunities. When your mindset is tuned to possibility, you recognize their value instantly. Recognition sparks action. Action creates pathways that you never would have predicted. Possibility thinking becomes a doorway to change. A crucial thought pattern involves releasing the need for certainty before taking steps forward. Certainty often restricts movement because it demands guarantees that do not exist. When you allow yourself to proceed without perfect clarity, your courage grows. Courage helps you take the first step, which reveals the second, and so on. This unfolding process builds momentum. Momentum carries you into new territory. A growth-oriented mindset encourages you to see challenges as teachers. When you interpret difficult situations as opportunities to develop new skills, fear loses its intensity. You become more willing to engage with obstacles rather than withdraw from them. Engagement reveals new strategies and insights. These insights illuminate new pathways. Growth becomes a natural result of your willingness to learn. Thought patterns that support forgiveness open internal space for forward movement. Holding on to resentment or regret blocks your ability to see new options. When you release these emotional weights, you free your mind from mental clutter. This freedom allows your energy to shift toward possibility rather than pain. With a clearer mind, your direction becomes more obvious. Forgiveness becomes a gateway to renewal. A powerful pattern involves intentionally directing your attention toward what you can influence. When you stop focusing on what is beyond your control, your energy becomes more efficient. This efficiency strengthens your ability to take meaningful action. Action produces results that reinforce your sense of capability. Capability widens your internal horizon. A widened horizon reveals paths you once overlooked. When you practice thinking from the perspective of your future self, new paths appear naturally. This perspective helps you make decisions that align with where you want to go rather than where you have been. Alignment creates coherence in your choices and strengthens your inner direction. Coherent action compounds into long-term transformation. Transformation becomes more intentional and less accidental. Thought patterns that prioritize learning over perfection encourage steady progress. Perfection restricts experimentation, while learning welcomes it. When you focus on growth rather than flawlessness, your mind becomes more adaptable and willing to explore. Exploration reveals hidden talents and new interests. These discoveries lead to opportunities that enrich your path. Learning becomes your compass. A thought pattern rooted in self-compassion opens new possibilities by reducing internal resistance. When you treat yourself with patience instead of harsh judgment, you create an environment where creativity and courage can thrive. This supportive inner atmosphere makes it easier to attempt new things. Attempts lead to insights. Insights illuminate directions you could not see before. The thought patterns that open new paths are those that expand your perception of what is possible. They free you from limitations, old beliefs, and narrow interpretations. With each expansive thought, your inner world becomes more spacious, allowing fresh ideas to form. These ideas act as stepping stones toward a more empowered life. Your thinking evolves into a source of strength. When your thought patterns shift, your entire direction shifts with them. You begin noticing opportunities in places that once felt empty. You feel more capable of exploring unfamiliar territory. Your decisions become guided by curiosity, clarity, and possibility rather than fear or habit. This inner evolution creates outward transformation. New paths open because your mind is finally ready to walk them. Becoming the creator of your inner world begins with realizing how much power you hold over your thoughts, emotions, and interpretations. Most people move through life believing their inner state is shaped entirely by external events. When you shift this belief, you reclaim the authority to shape your internal experience. This authority brings clarity to your choices and direction. Clarity becomes the foundation of inner creation. From this foundation, transformation begins. Your inner world is built from the meanings you assign to your experiences. When those meanings come from fear, old conditioning, or self-doubt, your inner environment becomes restricted. But when your meanings come from awareness and intention, your inner space expands. This expansion allows you to approach life with greater confidence and purpose. Confidence strengthens your resilience. Purpose guides your development. Creating your inner world requires noticing the patterns you've absorbed without questioning. These patterns may come from family, society, or past experiences. When you examine them with honesty, You see which ones support your growth and which ones hold you back. Letting go of outdated patterns frees mental space for new perspectives. These new perspectives determine the quality of your inner environment. Environment influences your entire path. Your inner world takes shape through the thoughts you choose to energize. Some thoughts strengthen you, while others weaken you. The more selective you become, the more aligned your inner world becomes with your true intentions. Selective focus helps you direct your mental energy effectively. Effective direction increases emotional balance. Balanced emotions create stability. Inner creation deepens when you realize that emotions are responses, not dictators. You can feel deeply without losing your sense of direction. This understanding gives you the freedom to experience emotions fully without being overwhelmed by them. When emotions arise, you observe them rather than react impulsively. Observation gives you space to choose your response. This space becomes a cornerstone of emotional mastery. Becoming the creator of your inner world involves building a mental environment where growth feels natural. This environment is shaped through consistent habits, thoughtful reflection, intentional focus, and compassionate self-talk. These habits strengthen your inner framework. A strong framework supports you through uncertainty and challenge. With every step, your inner world becomes more resilient. Resilience fuels sustainable transformation. When you take responsibility for your inner world, you stop seeking external validation to determine your worth. This shift liberates you from emotional dependence on outcomes or opinions. You begin trusting your inner voice more than external noise. That trust strengthens your self-respect. With self-respect, your choices become clearer and more aligned with your values. Values shape the architecture of your inner life. Creating your inner world means honoring the thoughts that uplift you and releasing those that diminish you. Not every thought deserves your attention, and not every worry needs to be entertained. When you cultivate discernment, your mind becomes more peaceful. Peace gives you clarity. With clarity, you navigate life with a steadier sense of direction. Direction fuels confidence. Inner creation invites you to build boundaries that protect your mental and emotional space. Boundaries are not walls but filters that determine what enters your mind and what is allowed to stay. These filters keep your inner world aligned with your intentions. When your environment supports your well-being, growth accelerates. Accelerated growth strengthens your sense of control. Control empowers your identity. The process of shaping your inner world becomes easier when you let go of comparisons. Comparison disrupts your internal harmony by directing your focus outward. When you bring your attention back to your unique journey, you reclaim your center. From that center, you create a mental space that reflects authenticity. Authenticity deepens your inner stability. Stability helps you move through life with grace. Becoming the creator of your inner world means embracing stillness. Stillness reveals insights that constant noise hides. When you allow your mind to quiet, you gain access to deeper wisdom that guides your decisions. This wisdom strengthens your relationship with yourself. With a stronger relationship, your internal world becomes more harmonious. Harmony becomes a quiet form of strength. Inner creation becomes powerful when you learn to shift your focus from problems to possibilities. Problems may still exist, but your attention determines your emotional experience. When you focus on potential solutions, your inner world feels more spacious and less burdened. Spaciousness increases creativity. Creativity introduces new choices. Choice expands your sense of freedom. Your inner world flourishes when you practice self-compassion. Harsh self-criticism creates mental tension that restricts growth. Compassion, on the other hand, softens your internal landscape and makes learning easier. When you treat yourself with patience, you become more willing to grow. Growth feels less like pressure and more like evolution. Evolution becomes natural. Creating your inner world involves cultivating a relationship with your thoughts rather than letting them run unchecked. When you engage with your thoughts consciously, you gain the ability to shape them. This shaping turns your mind into a tool for direction rather than a source of confusion. Direction brings coherence. Coherence supports consistent progress. Progress strengthens inner leadership. Your inner world becomes more powerful when you align your thoughts with your long-term vision. Vision acts as a compass that organizes your thinking, choices, and emotional energy. When your mind aligns with your aspirations, distractions lose their influence. This alignment helps you maintain momentum even during difficult periods. Momentum reinforces your commitment. Commitment anchors your growth. Becoming the creator of your inner world involves recognizing the influence of your environment. What you consume mentally, conversations, media, habits, affects your inner clarity. When you choose inputs that support your development, your internal landscape becomes more fertile. Fertility allows new ideas to grow with ease. These ideas guide you toward meaningful action. Meaningful action reinforces your sense of direction. Inner creation strengthens when you intentionally cultivate optimism. Optimism is not denial. It is the belief that solutions exist and growth is possible. This belief helps you approach challenges with creativity rather than defeat. Creative thinking opens pathways that fear would close. With each new pathway, your inner confidence expands. Expanded confidence shapes your identity. Your inner world transforms when you take ownership of your interpretations. Events will unfold, but you decide what they mean. When you choose interpretations that empower rather than restrict you, your inner environment becomes more supportive. This support fuels your resilience. Resilience allows you to keep moving even when circumstances are difficult. Movement keeps your vision alive. Creating your inner world requires embracing responsibility without judgment. Responsibility gives you power, while judgment drains your energy. When you understand that growth involves missteps and progress at the same time, you become more patient with yourself. Patience strengthens your inner center. A strong center helps you stay balanced regardless of external fluctuation. Becoming the creator of your inner world is about choosing consciousness over autopilot. When you make decisions based on awareness rather than habit, your life becomes a reflection of your values rather than your fears. This conscious creation shapes a mental environment filled with clarity, intention, and confidence. Over time, your outer life begins to mirror that inner transformation. Your inner world becomes your greatest source of power. When you fully embrace your role as creator, you realize that your inner world is not fixed. It is an evolving landscape shaped by your choices, beliefs, and attention. With every thought you nurture and every emotion you understand, you sculpt a deeper sense of self. This sculpted identity guides your actions and shapes your future. Your life becomes a reflection of your inner mastery. And that mastery begins with choosing to lead your inner world with intention. Every shift begins within, long before the world around you reflects it. Throughout this journey, you've explored the beliefs, patterns, and perspectives that silently direct your daily choices. You've seen how thought can limit or liberate you, how intention can replace reaction, and how clarity can rise from honesty. These shifts are not dramatic moments. They are quiet decisions made again and again in the privacy of your inner world. As you step forward from this audiobook, remember that your mind is not a fixed structure but a living environment that responds to reflection, direction, and awareness. The more intentionally you shape it, the more aligned your life becomes with your deeper purpose. Possibility expands, challenge transforms, confidence grows from the inside out. This is not the end of your mental shift. It's the beginning of how you will continue to build your future. Carry these insights with you. Apply them gently, consistently, and consciously. With each choice you make from clarity instead of fear, you strengthen the foundation of the life you are creating. Shift your mind, and the rest will follow.